Comparing the iPhone XR and the Mate 20 Pro from Huawei. I went out today and filmed both of these phones together. Make sure you watch till the end, as I'll put everything you need to know and all of the specs together so you can see which one you think is best. I'm in Huawei here in Shenzhen, where both of these phones are manufactured. Before we look at the cameras on both of these, let's have a look at the screen and the design. On the specs sheet, these two phones are absolutely miles apart. The Huawei Mate 20 Pro has an AMOLED screen, whereas the iPhone XR sticks with LCD. The Mate 20 Pro is packing a 6.4 inch screen, whereas the XR has a 6.1 inch screen. You can also see that the pixel density is so different. The Mate 20 Pro has almost twice the amount of pixels as the iPhone XR. The screen on these things is definitely different, right? So the Mate 20 Pro has those curved edges. The glass is thicker, it's an AMOLED screen. Like, you've got 2K screen on the Mate 20 Pro. It's just miles and miles above the iPhone XR. iPhone XR is not even 1080p, it's not even HD. In this day and age, it's 2019, how can you not have a 1080p screen? Also, it's an IPS LCD screen. Now, specs aren't the only thing. You have to look at these phones in person. It's about color gamut, it's about other things, not just about LCD versus AMOLED. Having said that, the Mate 20 Pro, the screen is super sharp, super bright, the colors are great. The iPhone XR screen, it's just, it's good, it's really good. Don't even care about the specs. It looks really good, but the screen on the Mate 20 Pro is just incredible. Now, if you like edges or not, then obviously that might sway you one way or another. In terms of the notch, actually they both have pretty much the same notch. They've both got that 3D technology to scan your face. All in all, you've got to say that the Mate 20 Pro screen is just way better than the iPhone XR's. There are big differences in the design of these two phones. The Mate 20 Pro feels thinner and longer than the iPhone XR. Because you have the curved glass at the front, it fits a bigger screen onto what feels like a smaller body. The bezels on the side of the Mate 20 Pro are virtually non-existent. The top and bottom bezels are very small as well. The iPhone XR's bezels are pretty big, to be honest. If you look at the video, you can see on the sides they're definitely bigger than the Mate 20 Pro. The iPhone XR has an IP67 rating, water dust resistant. The Mate 20 Pro just beats it with an IP68 rating. I like the design on the XR, but to be honest, it has that feel that Apple just made it a little bit less premium to differentiate it from the more expensive phones. The Mate 20 Pro, I love that design on the back. I love that green one. It also has this like notch design as well. And to be honest, I like the camera setup in the middle as well. Out of these two, it's difficult to choose, but I'd probably go for the Huawei. I just like the way it's designed. That is their premium product, whereas the Apple product, you know that they just tried to make it a little bit more cheap and the materials aren't as premium as their other ones. The camera setup on the Huawei features a 40 megapixel main camera, a 20 megapixel ultra wide camera and an 8 megapixel telephoto. They all have phase detection, autofocus, and the telephoto features a 5x optical zoom. The iPhone XR, on the other hand, is certainly different. The camera is placed up in the top left corner of the device and you just get one single lens on the back there. You'll never hear me talking bad about an iPhone camera, some of the best cameras in the market, but in this instance, the iPhone XR's camera just gets smashed out the park by the Mate 20 Pro. The iPhone XR just has one camera, no zoom, no wide angle, you're just stuck with that camera. Now, it's a great camera and it's going to be good for 80% of what you do, and the iPhone always excels in video. But the Mate 20 Pro just smashes it. It's got 40 megapixel main camera, you've got an ultra wide and a telephoto in there as well. Huawei is known for taking really amazing photos, not the best for video. If you're taking a lot of photos, Mate 20 Pro just has the best camera, it just does. It has really sharp images from that 40 megapixel main camera. And for me, that wide angle is so useful. It's unbelievable how good the images look when you put a super wide angle on something. It just gives you so many more options. Being an iPhone user myself and coming across that wide angle on the Huawei, it's just amazing. The telephoto on the Huawei also has a 5x optical zoom, which you don't get any optical zoom on the iPhone XR. It's not just about stats though. The iPhone XR has an amazing camera. Like I said, 80–90% of the time, you probably just use it as normal. But with the Mate 20 Pro, you have the options, the wide angle option, the optical image stabilization. For me, it's just a better camera setup. That's not to say that the iPhone doesn't give you great images. You can zoom digitally, and to be honest, it's going to be fine. You know an iPhone takes good images. They both record video in 4K, and on the Mate 20 Pro, you have an option. Wow, that guy just hopped up a big loogie, man. They both have 4K, and with the Huawei, you get a super slow-mo option, up to 960 frames per second. But the image quality of the video drops considerably. With the iPhone, you get 240 frames a second, and that keeps HD quality. As I said before, video, iPhone's always going to come out on top. The Kirin processor in the Huawei's does better with photos than it does for video. I'm going to have to give video portion to the iPhone. The front camera specs on these two are incredibly different. You get a 24 megapixel camera on the Huawei Mate 20 Pro and just 7 megapixels on the iPhone XR. The megapixel count on these front cameras is virtually irrelevant anyway. There are big differences in the way these two phones use and process images from that front camera. I would say the Huawei really over sharpens images that you take on that front sensor. It has a much higher megapixel count, and because it's a Chinese phone, it puts lots of beauty modes on there and really sharpens the images to make them look not really real to life, whereas the iPhone takes more natural images that you would consider to be an actual reflection of what you're taking a photo of. One of the benefits of the XR is that you're getting a cheaper iPhone, but you're still getting the A12 chip. The A12 is just simply the best chip you can find on any smartphone. Benchmark after benchmark, it just smashes the pants off of any other phone. Couple that with iOS, which manages everything really well, you're gonna have to give it to the iPhone. Having said that, the 980 Kirin from Huawei is a really decent chip, and to be honest, for everyday use, it's going to do everything you want it to do and more. You get the option to increase the memory of the Mate 20 Pro by using up to a 256 gig memory card. In classic Apple fashion, you can't add any memory to the iPhone XR. iOS and Android require different amounts of RAM to operate in the same sort of way. So just because the Mate 20 Pro has more RAM doesn't mean it will perform better than the iPhone. When I use phones with a fingerprint scanner, it reminds me how much I just dislike Face ID. I know Face ID is really secure, and most of the time it's absolutely fine. It's a really secure way to pay for things, but your fingerprint, it's just a better option a lot of the time. Face ID on the iPhone is very secure, but it's just so slow. It's so sluggish. It's improved since they first brought it out with some software updates, but the Mate 20 Pro just has a big advantage with that underscreen fingerprint scanner. Actually, the underscreen fingerprint scanner isn't as good as the more old school fingerprint scanners. They're getting better and better. The one on the Huawei is pretty quick, but it's not as quick as the old ones. Anyway, I think the Mate 20 Pro has a little bit of an advantage having some sort of fingerprint scanner on the front, whereas the iPhone doesn't have anything. You just have to rely on Face ID, and it's just sluggish and slow. Look, these are both fantastic phones. The XR isn't Apple's flagship, but it still has that A12 processor, and you know Apple, they just make phones that work. By buying the iPhone, you also get into the Apple ecosystem, which may or may not be really important for you if you have Apple products or other things that you want to use it with. The iPhone XR at the moment in America is just getting slashed and dashed. If you trade in your old phone, at the moment, when you buy a new one, you only have to pay $450 for an iPhone. If you don't trade in your old iPhone, you have to pay $750 in America for the iPhone X. The Huawei Mate 20 Pro is more expensive than the iPhone X, but the specs, they really are comparable. In China, The iPhone is way more expensive than the Huawei. In America, the Huawei is way more expensive than the iPhone. Which one that you want to buy may be swayed by the price difference in your market. Phone for phone, I think these two are really, really close. It's not just about specs, it's about how the phone will interact with you in your daily life. Two great phones, I'd be happy to have either one, to be honest. Maybe you want to go with iOS. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, then you're going to stick with the iPhone. If you don't care about the ecosystem as much, that Huawei is a really, really great bit of hardware.